Hey, buddy.
What's up, my man? How are you?
Good. We weren't sure we were going to get you. You know, Matt already left, so I'm glad I was here and able to take the call.
Awesome. Thank you.
We had Jon on today, which was nice to see Jon. He looks very, very focused. How are you feeling about this Gustafsson fight coming up?
I'm feeling good about it. You know, I want to hear that Jon is focused and training and ready to go. And, you know, I'm excited for him to come back. And obviously that fight is, you know, the greatest light heavyweight title fight ever, and I expect the second one to be great too.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2013, and Jon said he hadn't trained as hard as he should have for that first one, and he thought his career was over. Isn't it weird now to see him coming back and fight? Because I'll be honest, at one point, I did not think he'd fight the octagon again.
I didn't either. I didn't either. I agree with you, and yeah, and you know, he's had to overcome some serious demons to get back here. And, you know, just hoping he stays on the straight and narrow and makes it to the fight.
But yes, and by the way, buddy, I saw you in Vegas, and I do know how to keep a secret because you told me Adesanya, Anderson Silva, and I wanted to do nothing more than run my big fat fucking mouth, but I didn't say it. So you've actually made that happen now? That is official? Yeah,
I flew out to Australia. I sat down with Israel, talked to him. Then I flew to L.A. and sat down with Anderson and talked to him, and finally got it done. I figured stylistically this fight's so fun. And even if you look at Anderson Silva, you know, as old as he is and everything that's going on, still, I mean, look at his fight against Daniel Cormier. He hurt Cormier to the body. He's still a super talented guy. He loves martial arts. He stays in shape. And he stayed in shape this whole time, so, you know, it's going to be fun.
And I'll be honest, one of the good things, too, because I love Israel Adesanya, is that this is a way to get him into a co-main event, because that's a big fight for him, and against a legend like Anderson Silva. This is actually a legitimate co-main event.
Oh, yeah, it's an incredible co-main event. I mean, Israel's on fire. I mean, this kid is looks so damn good. His fight with Derek Brunson was unbelievable. Looked completely dominant against, you know, a guy who has heavy hands and is such a good wrestler. And, you know, when you look at Israel fight, all you can think is, man, imagine him and Anderson Silva.
Yeah, he looks like a younger version of Silva. It'll be interesting to see, because Silva's a bigger guy, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle each other and how Anderson fights probably, I'm going to guess, a slightly faster version of himself.
I agree. I love this fight. I personally wanted to see this fight myself, and makes all the sense in the world. I love it.
And, you know, we talked to Ben Askren the other day. We haven't spoken to you since the big trade, which you pulled it off. It happened. What are your thoughts on Ben Askren? And is he fighting Robbie Lawler? Has that been confirmed?
Yes.
It is.
He's fighting Robbie Lawler. You know, the kid called me a few months ago and said, what are the odds of me coming to the UFC? I said, I don't know. What's going on with your contract over there? And he said, well, I think they'll let me go. Of course they're not going to let him go.
Right.
So over the last several months, we've figured out a way to get him here. He's undefeated. Obviously, a lot of people want to see him fight the best in the world. And now we're going to get that opportunity, so I'm glad it worked out.
Is Demetrius leaving? You know, because TJ said something about coming down and how you're paying him to kind of you're paying a fuck ton of money to kill the flyweight division. Is Demetrius leaving and TJ fighting Cejudo some type of a bad sign possibly for the flyweight division?
Who said I paid a fuckload of money to kill the division?
That was TJ Dillashaw. Said they paid me a fuck ton of money to kill the flyweight division.
I don't even know what that means, but yeah, no. Listen, TJ Dillashaw didn't do shit to the flyweight division. You know, the flyweight division just never took off. It never caught on. Even with a dominant champion like Demetrius, it just never caught on. People didn't care. I battled for a long time. I tried to keep it alive, and obviously it's still going on now. You know, we still have fights going on in that division. But we'll see. We'll see what the future holds for it.
Okay, maybe that's what he meant. Maybe he said coming down and beating the champion. I'm not sure what he meant, but he did say that.
Maybe that's what he meant, that he's going to beat Cejudo and kill the division.
Now, the president of ONE, whose name I cannot pronounce, he said recently that there's going to be more MMA trades in the future. Is there anything like that's on the horizon or anybody you're interested in from there?
No, there's nothing else going on. I think that, you know, what happened was this was the only way to get this deal done. It made sense. and I've made offers to other organizations too. I've made offers that haven't panned out, but it's something that you can do. It's interesting, and in this scenario, it worked out really well, I think, for both of us.
Now, do you want to say who you tried to get that couldn't get?
No, it's not that I was trying to get somebody. I made an offer to another organization.
Oh,
and they didn't take it.
I was happy for Francis Ngannou. I did not see a first round knockout of Curtis Blaydes. I guess you must be happy to see him kind of right the ship a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't see that coming either. But Francis has that power. I watched the fight. I think it was premature. I think they could have let that go a little bit longer. Curtis jumped back up and seemed all right. And with the heavyweights, you never know. Some of the greatest fights we've ever seen, are when you let the fight go. Bigfoot Silva and Mark Hunt, one of the most incredible fights I've ever seen, period, let alone heavyweight. Dan Henderson and Shogun.
Yeah.
And the list goes on and on. I could rattle off 1,000 of them. But
Pat Barry, Czech Congo. I mean, Matt, I think, mentioned that one as well.
Pat Barry, Czech Congo.
I had mixed feelings about it just because he knocked him down 3 times, and Blaydes did kind of jump up fast, but he wasn't really defending, and his arms were on the floor, and Ngannou's giant fucking hands hit, and maybe the ref thought he was in worse shape than he was in. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's true. Believe me, I got my guys here who, matchmakers think it was a good stoppage.
And before we get, I wanted to obviously ask you about a couple of things in the heavyweight division. But we had Jon in here today, and he said, I asked him about the Liddell Twitter thing because he said now he's not going to address Chuck on Twitter anymore. And I'm taking it you did see that fight. I'm not sure if you watched it.
I was up at my house in Maine. I saw it on the internet, on the social media the next day.
We're talking, of course, about Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz, and obviously I'm sure Chuck wanted to do that fight in the UFC. How do you feel about that fight going on?
Listen, I love Chuck Liddell, and I don't ever want to badmouth Chuck Liddell or even people even think I'm remotely badmouthing Chuck Liddell. But the reality is, first of all, let's say this first. I heard last week the Cokehead, Oscar De La Weirdo, is talking shit that I don't have any place to tell guys when to retire. I don't tell friends when. First of all, it's called friendship. Friendship, you fucking Cokehead. I've been friends with Chuck Liddell, for 20 years, and the reality is that Chuck Liddell retired when he should have retired 8-9 years ago, however long it was. And Chuck Liddell's almost 50 years old and has no business fighting anymore. And the fact that the state of California even let that fight happen is disgusting. Disgusting. Chuck Liddell has an incredible legacy. He's a huge superstar in this sport. So of course, as a friend, anybody who claims to be a friend of Chuck Liddell and was anywhere near this fight is full of shit. They're not a friend of Chuck Liddell. To let him go in and fight this fight is terrible.
And it's not a case. It's not a case of you telling him to retire early. Obviously you guys were very close, and you don't want to see him get hurt.
That's the problem. Is Chuck Liddell is a fighter. Chuck Liddell loves to fight. That's his passion. It's what he loves in life. But there comes a day and age. Fighting is a young man's game. You can't do it. And Oscar fucking De La Hoya says, come over to Golden Boy where we respect the fighters, and it makes me sick what these fighters were paid and all this shit. Out of 14 fights on the card, 5 bouts were amateur fights, which means he didn't pay him jack shit, right?
Right.
And 12 of the professional fighters on the card made less than 3-3. What the fuck are you talking about, you cokehead junkie? And some of the guys on the card made 1,000 and 1,000. And you know what? He respects the fighters so much, he couldn't even remember their fucking names at the press conference.
Yeah, he was saying that imagine if you would have told George Foreman or Bernard Hopkins, but those guys are very, very rare exceptions. How about Meldrick Taylor or what happened to Ali? There's so many more cases of fighters who get hurt badly and who wind up in terrible shape by fighting too long than the very, very rare exceptions who make it through okay.
Exactly. I hope somebody talks De La Hoya into fighting again, okay? I hope the state of California makes the fight, and I hope he gets fucking knocked out just like Chuck Liddell did in the first round. Fucking cokehead nutball.
Well, you know, Tito even said afterwards that he would not have let Chuck fight.
Yeah. Tito's listen. Tito and Oscar De La Dummy were made for each other, man. Those two fucking nutheads. First of all, Tito says, "Hey, you guys want to get paid? Come over to Golden Boy MMA." Are you kidding me? Hey, my brother, wait a couple months till this whole thing pans out. Everybody's going to be suing everybody in a couple months. There was no money made over there. De La Hoya's a moron, an absolute moron, and I don't know how Chuck allowed himself to be talked into this stupid shit.
You know, it's probably just one of those things where he wanted to fight, and Oscar De La Hoya told him what he wanted to hear.
Yeah, I agree with you, unfortunately.
Have you talked to Chuck at all in the lead up or since the fight? Have you guys spoken?
I did. I talked to him before the fight, but I haven't talked to him since. You know, I'm at least going to give the guy a couple days, and I'll give him a call this week.
Yeah, I mean, and when he says something like, "Well, who's to tell fighters?" I mean, that's like saying, "Why have a ref? Who's to tell fighters when they're not knocked out?" I mean, you know, there are people around you who kind of have to look out.
Well, you know who tells a fighter when it's time to hang up? His friend. That's who tells him when it's time to hang it up.
That's right. I mean,
his friend does.
Joe told, there's a famous, where Joe and Brendan Schaub were talking, and Joe told him, "Look, I don't know if you can do this anymore." And it's, I'm sure, a very hard conversation to have with a guy that you respect, but the fact that you care about him has got to come above possibly hurting his feelings or pissing him off.
100%.
Do you
100%.
Do you think this is purely financial for Chuck, or do you think that there was a combination of just wanting to get in there again? Because 8 years is a long layoff.
Listen, Chuck Liddell is a fighter, man. Chuck, when I asked Chuck to retire, he didn't want to either. You know, he should have retired when he did, and he should have stayed retired. But like the Cokehead said, you know, Chuck's a grown man and can do whatever he wants to do. But that's when the state of California has to step in and protect the fighter from himself.
Yeah, and didn't De La Hoya at first, wasn't he knocking the whole Conor Floyd thing? And then after he saw how popular it was, that he said he wanted to step in and fight Conor?
Yeah, no, that's what started this whole thing with me and him. I had always liked Oscar, respected him, you know, talked about his fights and stuff. Then the guy comes out and starts ripping Conor McGregor versus Floyd. Then as soon as the fight's over, he says now he wants to fight Conor McGregor. This guy needs to check himself into rehab immediately.
Do you think that's what it is?
He's standing up at a press conference, rubbing his hands, talking about how cold he is, and that he doesn't know any of the fighters, doesn't know any of their names. The main event, he doesn't even know how to say Chuck Liddell.
What do you think he's doing in MMA? Do you think it's just the way he's a little late and he figures he can make money off it, or?
I think he's snorting a ton of cocaine, and Google him. Google him. I think he's snorting a ton of cocaine and doing a lot of other things. And then, you know, I don't even think he's involved in any of this stuff. I think there's a bunch of people behind the scenes who really do all the work and put this together for him. He snorts about 12 pounds of coke when he gets up in the morning and just shows up where they tell him to show up.
I love you. Yeah, I mean, it is weird to hear him try to get into to get into it, and then just say how you know, and then stand on the other side and try to be a competitor. I think just wants to get into the game, and he's probably a little bit too late.
It's not even that he's too late. He's not smart enough to get into the game. He's not smart enough, and he doesn't have the work ethic. This guy's a total, you know, he's doing other things. He's doing recreational things that are keeping him from even thinking about competing. You know what I mean? You show up to a press conference, at the very least, I'll give you this one, at least know how to say the main event's name, okay? Yeah. Let alone, he literally lines up a bunch of guys behind him. He's like, yeah, I don't really know any of these guys or their names. Well, how about you write it down on a fucking piece of paper, you dope?
Yeah.
Okay? Write it down on a piece of paper and read the piece of paper. You know?
Well, you know.
He is This guy has no shame. He's unbelievable. I just, some of the things that this guy has done, I would disappear and you'd never see me again. He doesn't give a shit. He jumps right back up there, talking in front of the media. He's hilarious.
Well, hopefully Chuck, and again, I love Chuck too. He's one of the first fighters I ever interviewed. I have a lot of respect for Chuck. He's a legend. And again, these guys, it's very hard for them to step away. I'm sure like the rush of walking in, when he used to come out, even at events, when I'd see him when he had a job for UFC, just whenever he walked into the arena, the place would explode. And it's got to be very hard for guys to walk away from that. But it is,
yeah, it's very hard. And one of the things that, again, bums me out is my thing was, there's no way first of all, I don't want to make $1 of this kind of money.
Right.
I do not. I've said that since day one. When I mean day one, 17 years ago. Number two is my backup, which I was hoping is no major state will sanction this fight. That's not going to happen. Because all the big states like Nevada, California, New York, whatever, they have athletic commissions. No athletic commission, major athletic commission is going to sanction this fight. Wrong. Yeah.
Did they
so
try?
I was hoping this thing would end up, they're going to be in, Kentucky somewhere trying to make this fight, and the fight would never come off. I didn't know Kentucky, California was going to happen. I didn't see that coming.
Dana, did they try it in New York or in Vegas? Or?
They didn't have to. They were the Oscar de la Knucklehead, and California took it immediately. California didn't even blink at that fight.
Yeah, and
Are you kidding me? How many first-round knockouts has Tito? How many knockouts has Tito had in his career? Standing knockouts like that? None. Chuck Liddell should have never been in that fight. All the fans were talking about it leading up to the, just watching footage. Did anybody from the Athletic Commission show up to watch him spar or anything like that? It's just, it's terrible, man.
And the fans love Chuck, and I think one reason even fans still want to see somebody fight, it's almost like when you want to see your favorite band, a reunion. Watching them reminds you of how you were 10 years ago too. So it brings people back, and it's it's a spectacle, and people are like, hey, if he's still fighting, then I'm not as old as I thought I was. But the UFC could have made probably a good money off doing this fight, and you guys obviously declined it because, like you said, you don't want to make money on that.
Never.
Well, hopefully,
never, man.
Hopefully he's okay.
And the thing is, for a guy like Chuck, obviously took some damage in the fight, but what kind of damage did he take training for that fight, leading up to that fight? It just makes me sick, man. Makes me absolutely sick.